They were Southside sons of Chicago who became superstars.
STYX was, white guys singing high and playing loud.
We were the first band to have 4 triple platinum albums in a row.
STYX struck a chord with the public, but struck out with the critics.
The new STYX record was compared to a parking lot full of whale vomit.
STYX rocked their way to the top of the charts, only to be undone by a #1 love song.
When Babe came, there was a big transition to commercial music.
Tommy and JY were fearful of doing a straight ballad.
The band was big enough already. We didn't have to stretch out into Barry Manilow's territory.
Babe, I love you.
I see a future without rock and roll music.
Then the battle between blazing guitars and soft rock theatrics reached a dramatic climax. Eventually, the band that critics couldn't touch tore itself apart.
There was competition definitely between Dennis and Tommy.
What I think I provided for STYX was leadership, not control.
I know you feel these are the words.
Never in my wildest dreams could I have ever imagined STYX performing a concert without me.
Now, how the Windy City's hometown heroes became a hit-making House Divided and sailed away to become one of the hardest touring rock and roll bands in the world. This is STYX, the story behind the music. In the heyday of arena rock, STYX was a stadium-packing sensation. From 1975 to 1983, STYX hit with 7 top 10 singles. They became the first band to release 4 triple platinum albums in a row.
Not even the Beatles or the Stones or anybody else before that had done that.
Well, let's get it on!
STYX was named after the mythological river in hell, but even after 40 years of performing, they're not ready for the afterlife yet. Led by guitar heroes Tommy Shaw and James J.Y. Young, STYX is still pleasing fans with the sound they made famous. But while the band showcases their greatest hits, they're playing their songs without the man who wrote many of them. STYX co-founder Dennis DeYoung. Now performing as a solo act backed by a 50-piece orchestra, Dennis was stunned that STYX would tour without him. STYX has always been hard to define. The melody and theatricality of Dennis DeYoung, the renegade rock and roll energy of Tommy Shaw, and the hard rock bombast of JY. Torn by competing musical visions, there was always more harmony on stage than off.
I always described STYX as a democracy of which I was the president. But there always was the Houses of Congress to deal with.
Power politics came naturally to STYX. Born in Chicago, STYX came from a city where Mayor Daley's political machine still had clout, where hard work was expected and loyalty demanded. Home for STYX was the blue-collar Southside Chicago neighborhood of Roseland. It was here in the summer of 1962 that 15-year-old Dennis DeYoung first heard 14-year-old fraternal twins John and Chuck Panazzo play.
One day I was walking by here, and the windows were all open, and it was hotter than hell. And I heard a band playing, so I ran up on the porch, and sure enough, there was a little band in there.
John Panazzo was playing drums, and his brother Chuck was on guitar. Dennis thought his accordion would fit right in.
And I told him, tomorrow, why don't you bring your gear over to my basement, and we'll start a band.
Calling themselves Trade Winds, the three began performing in 1964.
We played weddings, anniversaries, birthday parties, and then we started to play dances.
Keeping the band intact, Dennis, John, and Chuck attended Chicago State College together in the late 60s. There, they added guitar player John Serlewski to the band, now called TW4. In 1970, TW4 went to 5 when a 21-year-old Southside guitarist named James J.Y. Young joined the band. J.Y. brought a hard rock edge to TW4.
They were very mainstream in what they did, and I was really the counterculture element. All of a sudden, there was a balance, and there was something that made everybody really pay attention to what was going on.
After 2 years of playing with J.Y., the band landed a recording deal with Wooden Nickel Records. The small Chicago label liked TW4's music, but insisted on changing its name.
We had lists of names, and we couldn't get 5 guys to agree. Finally, STYX was suggested. We liked that it was short. We liked the mythology. Everyone could vote for it. No one voted against it.
With a new name and their first record contract, it was time to take a risk and go for broke.
We have to make a decision. We're either going to do this full time, or we're just going to be, we're going to be playing in lounges the rest of our lives.
For Dennis, the decision to rock full time was more complicated. Dennis had married his high school sweetheart, Suzanne, 2 years earlier.
I was the only girlfriend for a while. I was the only fiance. I was the only wife, and then the only one who had children.
I was married, I had a child, and I was a school teacher, and I decided that I was going to quit my job cold and try to be a rock star.
STYX hit the road hard, pounding it out gig after gig across the Midwest. Thanks to their Midwestern fans, the first STYX single briefly cracked the Hot 100 in the fall of '72. And as the band worked on their second album, 26-year-old Dennis took his songwriting to a new level.
I had my chance as a songwriter, so I did what came natural to me. I wrote Lady and the kinds of songs that I thought that I should be writing.
Lady, when you're with me, I'm smiling.
I was stunned that he was prepared to tell the world about me and that he loved me, because in those days, to be a rock star and to have a wife, that was not cool.
The reception to the record wasn't cool either. It was ice cold.
Lady was a bomb. And I thought, they hate me. They don't like what I do.
Record buyers didn't care much for the third and fourth STYX albums either. By the end of 1974, the band's window of opportunity was closing fast. After years of gigging in clubs, STYX was about to get a boost from the most powerful radio station in America, Chicago's WLS.
For STYX, or for anybody else for that matter, to get a record on, it didn't guarantee success, but it certainly helped. And you were never going to be a huge success without it.
When STYX brought their new album to WLS, they discovered the station staffers were already fans of Lady. In fact, the program director had a plan.
I'm going to play Lady tonight at 8 o'clock on John Landecker's show. And I'm going to play it once a night at 8 o'clock until it's a hit record.
I believe my great ad-lib was, "Hey, STYX, welcome to WLS." And bang, went into the song.
Thanks to the push from WLS, Lady became a top 10 hit in 1975. Dennis DeYoung now had no doubt that he had the vision and the clout to lead STYX into the future.
That was my first chance to say, okay, I'm going to direct this band the way I think it should go. And because of the success of Lady, I had that ability.
Coming up, a new guitarist kicks STYX in a new direction.
When Tommy came in, he shook everybody up.
And later, the concept that nearly killed STYX.
Every night, Shakespeare, not rock and roll. Excuse me.
When Behind the Music continues. Dennis DeYoung had grand ambitions for STYX in 1975. After 5 years of hometown glory in Chicago, Dennis was ready to lead the band to nationwide fame.
Dennis has really got natural-born leadership sort of characteristics. He was saying we're the best band in the world when I personally didn't believe it.
A&M Records also believed in STYX and signed the group in 1975. A&M put STYX and veteran manager Derek Sutton together.
My job was then to take this great live band and spread it around the country. They just needed to be exposed to a much broader audience.
But guitarist John Serluski resented the power shift in the band.
Dennis was becoming a much more dominant force in the band, and I think this made him unhappy.
When Serluski quit the band, STYX needed a new guitarist. Tour manager Jim Vos found them one.
I just said, I got the guy. Just wait till I find him. I got the guy.
The guy was Tommy Shaw, a guitarist whom Vos had last seen perform with a local Chicago band called MS Funk. The audition was simple.
1, you had to have good hair. 2, you had to play guitar a little bit.
And he had to come in and be able to sing the highest parts in Lady.
The fact that I was a songwriter and a lead guitar player and a lead singer was just, it was nice, and we were glad you do, but that, that's not what we need right now.
As a bonus, Tommy brought an added element of showmanship.
My reaction was, thank the Lord. Here's somebody that's going to change this band from being a band that stands and plays to a band that actually entertains an audience.
And Tommy's influence went beyond showmanship. As a songwriter, Tommy, together with Dennis and J.Y., produced The Grand Illusion, their first platinum-selling album.
It was when the band was working collectively together, writing together, rehearsing together.
We were a band. That was STYX at its finest.
And STYX's faithful following put Come Sail Away in the top 10 in 1978. But STYX had few fans among the critical press.
The one bit of criticism that always sticks out in my mind was that the new STYX record was compared to a parking lot full of whale vomit.
The media has always been disrespectful to STYX.
They thought we were this corporate rock band. There wasn't any substance to what we were doing.
Grown organically from Southside Chicago roots, STYX bridled at the corporate rock label. But they couldn't deny they were operating like a corporation.
When you're a band, you're on the mission together. You hang out together, you write together, you party together. And we weren't doing any of that. At that point, we were just like a business.
A business that was turning increasingly competitive.
There was competition definitely between Dennis and Tommy.
Babe, I'm leaving.
Dennis came to the table for the next album, Cornerstone, with this song called Babe. And it was a real dilemma because it was unlike anything that I'd ever anticipated doing in STYX.
For me, it was a dramatic departure from what we were known for, and I knew it would alienate a number of our fans.
I think it began the slow division of the two camps in STYX.
When Babe was released in late '79, it went all the way to #1. Another stunning victory for Dennis DeYoung's musical vision.
Dennis definitely took control.
Babe, I love you.
Coming up, Mutiny on the Bandstand.
The upshot of it was, I got fired from the band.
And later, STYX on the Rocks.
Basically, everyone just said goodbye with one finger up in the air.
When Behind the Music continues. In the winter of 1980, the musical battle lines within STYX hardened. After Dennis DeYoung's love song, Babe, went to #1, Tommy Shaw and James J.Y. Young had their fill of soft rock. But Dennis's next ballad took an even softer direction.
Just close your eyes, no one will mind.
Babe was one thing, but when it came to First Time, it was like, no, we just can't do that. That can't be who we become. The band was big enough already. We didn't have to stretch out into Barry Manilow's territory. And so we put our foot down.
I had gotten a phone call that Tommy Shaw did not want First Time released as a single, and that he was going to quit the band if it was released.
That February, the members of STYX met in a Southside Chicago hotel to confront the growing split in the band.
I got fired from the band.
But when the band couldn't think of a replacement for Dennis, their resolve crumbled.
When push came to shove, everybody else wanted Dennis back.
8 weeks after his temporary firing, Dennis returned to the band. Dennis led the band toward another theme album. In the spring of '81, Paradise Theater became the first STYX album to hit #1.
I do hereby proclaim STYX Day.
I love flying first class.
That was sort of the pinnacle of our success.
But success didn't mean the band's creative battles were over.
I remember Tommy coming into my room in Tokyo and saying, please, for God's sake, let's not do another concept album. We need some rock and roll.
But Dennis was already planning the group's most ambitious concept album yet.
Kilroy.
Titled Kilroy was here, it tackled themes of censorship, rock and roll rebellion, and the dangers of technology.
I see a future without rock and roll music.
I really just kind of came up empty. I just couldn't think of songs about robots.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roboto, for helping me escape to where I needed to.
When it was released in '83, Kilroy kept the money rolling in.
Roboto was a #1 single. The album sold 2.5 million copies.
For the Kilroy tour, Dennis dreamed up a show that was more of a multimedia stage musical than a rock concert.
Roboto, your statement has no meaning. You are in error.
Many times I have bemoaned the fact that I, through my sheer will, kind of dragged the band into that project.
The Kilroy tour was booked in small, intimate venues, but the rock and roll animals in the band had a tough time playing roles in a futuristic theater piece.
I'll tell you how I dealt with it. I started self-medicating. I was full of songs and I was full of rock music, but there was no outlet for it anymore in STYX. So add to that some whiskey and cocaine, and you've got trouble.
But drink and drugs didn't make the nightmare of the Kilroy tour go away.
Damn it! Damn it!
A band that could have been selling out arenas and stadiums was losing a fortune playing in small theaters. STYX looked to offset their losses as they embarked on a lucrative stadium tour. At the Cotton Bowl in Texas, STYX was set to follow some of the era's hardest-rocking acts.
Hey, that's great.
STYX, Triumph, Nugent, Blue Oyster Cult. Sammy Hagar was the special guest.
It started at 2 in the afternoon. I think the temperature was probably about 102, 103. Everybody was getting just terribly pissy with booze, people running around, fist fights.
I'm thinking, in a few minutes, I've got to walk out there and stand on that stage for 10 minutes going, but Kilroy, what about the young people of America? They're going to kill me. I'm going to die in Texas.
This was Quaaludes, Jack Daniels, and Show Us Your... They did not want to see robots and rubber suits and actors. By the end of Roboto, you could see that there was a traffic jam trying to get away from the stadium version of Kilroy. And it was depressing, it was heartbreaking, but we had to press on and we had to take Shakespeare into a football stadium. Disaster.
Haven't we been here before?
The conflict between Dennis's grand theatrical vision and Tommy's rock and roll soul was now impossible to ignore.
I can stay 1 minute more.
Where's Tommy Shaw going after Kilroy is over?
Probably check into a hospital.
Yeah? For what disease?
For mental health. For lack of it.
Who's finally learned to say no?
Tommy wasn't just leaving the tour, he was quitting the band.
I felt like, well, I'm not doing the music that I like anymore. I'm not inspired. It's not fun anymore. I'm out of here.
That tour, basically, everyone just said goodbye with one finger up in the air.
Coming up, the band's heartbeat is still.
my sister calls and said, I have some bad news. John passed away.
And a reunion opens old wounds.
For Dennis, it was either his way or the highway, and we've chosen the highway.
When Behind the Music continues. After releasing 5 double platinum albums in a row, STYX disbanded in 1984. The sudden breakup was like being forced into early retirement.
It was a very hard period of time because it was like the rug was pulled right from under us after this huge success. And I don't care what anybody says, the guys really wanted their own solo projects.
Tommy Shaw, Dennis DeYoung, and James J.Y. Young made solo albums while Chuck Panazzo turned to business interests. But the sudden withdrawal was harder for Chuck's drum-playing brother, John.
John was a very regular guy whose life was tied up in this band.
Once you're in a position where you're a big-time rock and roller and you've done what we've done, nothing can top it. What do you do?
Some people have a hard time putting down the bottle, and Johnny just never was able to put it down.
With Tommy out of STYX in 1990, Dennis led the band the way he wanted.
Show me the way.
Dennis insisted, when we got back together, that he be given veto power over all band decisions. Otherwise, he wasn't going to get back together.
Do I think that I know what's best for STYX as a collective? In most cases, yes.
Needing a new frontman, STYX tapped New Jersey guitarist Glenn Burtnick. But taking Tommy's place on tour was difficult.
I remember on stage a couple of times getting the finger from some people in the audience.
A&M's response to the STYX comeback album was equally rude. It dumped the band in 1991. It looked like STYX's time was running out. Meanwhile, Tommy had joined Damn Yankees, a rock supergroup with veterans Ted Nugent and Jack Blades, and upset Dennis by poking fun at his biggest hit ballad.
I'd start playing the opening notes to Babe. Ted would come over and, Tommy, I think your guitar is a little out of tune. Why don't you let me touch it up for you? He'd take it out and smash it into a million pieces. It was funny.
Later that summer, the STYX and Damn Yankees tours crossed paths.
We're staying in the same hotel, and I didn't see him, but I get on the elevator, and the door opens, and there's Tommy.
I said, well, let's sit down and let's straighten this out right now.
I said, look, man, I don't know why you're doing that. If you want to hurt me, it's working. I said, but I don't know why you would do that to us, to what we created together.
I promised Dennis, I gave him my word that I would never make fun of Babe like that again, and I've kept that promise.
Then in 1995, STYX suddenly had new life.
A&M wanted to repackage our greatest hits, and they wanted to get the rights to do Lady, and Nickel wouldn't allow it.
But there's a loophole in the contract which said if you re-recorded it, you could do it.
So I came up with the idea of re-recording the song with Tommy.
Tommy and J.Y. went to Dennis's house.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
And they harmonized together for the first time since 1984.
You're my lady.
And I sang that high note that got me the job in the first place. And it was fun. It seemed like the past was kind of behind us. It was great.
Tommy, J.Y., and Dennis decided to take the STYX reunion on tour. Bassist Chuck Panazzo joined the lineup right away. But drummer John Panazzo was mired in a losing battle with alcohol addiction.
We went to see him, and I was just shocked at how frail he was. And at that point, we knew that there's no way he could commit to a tour.
It was Chuck's job to deliver the blunt news to John.
And that was the hardest telephone call I ever had to make. They said, John, we've all decided that we think it's best if you stay home and get healthy. I heard the silence on the other side. So it was heartbreaking for both of us.
John Panazzo had played with his twin brother and Dennis for more than 30 years. Now he was replaced with Todd Sucherman, a lifelong STYX fan.
Chuck had always played with John all his life, and at the very first rehearsal that I did with him, he told me I was the second drummer he'd ever played with, and that knocked me out.
The tour was an immediate triumph as Styx recaptured the magic of their heyday.
It was a huge, huge success.
We went out and kicked ass.
Aside from the fact that John Panazzo didn't participate, it was the most magnificent moment of my life professionally to that point, because I didn't ever think that that was going to happen again.
His bandmates kept hoping that John would regain his health and join the tour. But on July 16, 1996, a complete Styx reunion became impossible.
Dear John, I'll see you.
You know, my sister calls and said, I have some bad news. John passed away. Oh, it's like like somebody walked into the room and pounded me right in the heart.
John Panazzo was only 48 years old.
It was a complete shock, because none of us expected him to go that soon.
Like many people with a lot of energy, it's like a star. They burn out. He just kind of burnt out, sadly.
How I miss my friend.
Styx dedicated their remaining shows to John's memory. The next year, they marked the 20th anniversary of their breakout album, Grand Illusion, with another tour. It was a short tour. Dennis had a prior commitment to stage his musical adaptation of The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
All the time we were on tour with Styx, I was flying to New York and Nashville and Chicago casting for the Hunchback premiere that was going to be in September.
A few months after the premiere, Dennis suffered a devastating bout with the flu.
I had really worked myself physically and emotionally to a nub. There was nothing left to fight back, and the thing just decimated me.
He was very, very tired. We'd gone to like 16 different doctors trying to zero in on why he was tired.
And the upshot of it is I've become light sensitive. And it took me almost a year of going to doctors to figure out it was the light that was causing me to be fatigued and causing my face to heat up. And it was a nightmare experience for me.
Dennis says he's been to 16 doctors and they can't figure out what's wrong with him. I mean, I'm going to let that stand as a statement, If they can't figure it out, I don't know how I'm supposed to.
While Dennis's diagnosis was in question, no one could deny that the music of Styx was enjoying a pop culture revival. It started with a Styx song on the TV show South Park.
The minute Cartman sang Come Sail Away, the floodgates opened. It was just remarkable. Suddenly all this Styx stuff was happening. There was this Big Daddy film. There's Freaks and Geeks.
You're my lady of the morning.
Styx, for some reason, nailed that teenage emotional angst. I'm in love, you're my lady, I must have you, better than anybody else I ever saw.
In 1999, movies, TV shows, and even commercials revived the music of Styx. Hoping to capitalize on the revival, band members met that winter to plan the next Styx tour.
I laid the whole plan out in front of the band members at Dennis's house, and everybody was like, oh man, this is going to be great. And Dennis was very quiet about the whole thing.
We're all thinking, how come Dennis hasn't said anything? And he finally did. He says, I guess you're all waiting to hear what I have to say. And as soon as he said that, my heart sunk. And I knew. It's over.
Dennis was suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome and didn't feel healthy enough to commit to an exhausting rock and roll tour.
Anybody else feel like quitting? No? All right, so we're going on.
There was a time.
For the first time since Dennis DeYoung co-founded the band 37 years earlier, Styx was going on tour without him.
I was devastated. And never in my wildest dreams could I have ever imagined Styx performing a concert without me.
Dennis was so good for this band for the first 10 years, but it's really been all about him for himself, in my judgment, ever since then. For Dennis, it was either his way or the highway, and we've chosen the highway.
So goodbye to Roseline.
Coming up, Dennis DeYoung sues the band for control of the Styx name.
He got the right to be Dennis DeYoung.
Chuck Panazzo reveals the secret that almost kills him. And the band become an inspiration for a new generation of musicians. When Behind the Music continues. As they approached the turn of the century, STYX continued with their tour plans without Dennis. Glenn Burtnick returned to play bass, standing in for Chuck, who was fighting a personal battle with illness. There was also the small matter of who would replace Dennis DeYoung.
I stand accused before you.
We're playing in Quebec City, and the promoter suggests to have a solo artist play piano by himself with no band to open for STYX. And I said, what idiot would do that? Well, that was Lawrence Gowan.
Musically, we gelled immediately, and so that gave me, that instilled a sense of that we had what it took to overcome any obstacles.
With Lawrence on board and free from the creative control of Dennis DeYoung, the band honed down their act to what they liked most, rock and roll. But would the fans accept the new STYX?
What we really wanted to do was go out and play what went over best and what was the most fun to do live, and that was to rock. The band had this raw energy when we first began, and for one reason or another over the years, it just sort of lost some of that.
We just decided to narrow our focus kind of to my favorite era of STYX, which was kind of 75 through 78, Equinox, Crystal Ball, Grand Illusion, and Pieces of 8.
It's a palpable, contagious energy. And I think people are really taken aback by that.
And during Come Sail Away, Lawrence Gowan gets up on the top of his piano as the song is ending. And the last thing that he does is he jumps from the top of the piano to almost the middle of the stage, which none of us had ever seen before. And it was like, this is going to work.
But as the new lineup enjoyed their rock and roll freedom, Dennis DeYoung was reluctant to accept his enforced exile. He decided to sue the band for control of the STYX name.
We parted company from Dennis in 1999. He filed a suit in federal court, a trademark suit over the use of the name STYX.
The result of the lawsuit was that Tommy and JY ended up with the name STYX.
And ultimately, no one is allowed to say they won, but we have the rights to use the name.
He got the right to be Dennis DeYoung.
With a clear road ahead, STYX found themselves back on the world stage playing to a global TV audience of 100 million for the Super Bowl.
There's only been 2 artists ever that have played on the game floor of the Super Bowl more than once. STYX and Sting. That's it. No one else.
You really can't throw us a curveball anymore. We can play any kind of venue and own it and not be afraid of it.
With their newfound appetite for touring, they joined forces with REO Speedwagon, Journey, Boston, and STYX released 3 consecutive live albums.
It was just a way of getting music out there with this lineup, and little by little trying to reestablish the band and get our fans comfortable.
People want to hear Renegade and Blue Collar Man and Come Sail Away, and Too Much Time on My Hands, and the list goes on, and we most every night give that to them.
Chuck had kept his homosexuality secret from the world for many years, but his worsening physical condition had forced Chuck to admit to the band and his friends that he was HIV positive. They urged him to get the right medical help.
When we got back together and hadn't seen him for a while, and suddenly showed up, and he looked very ill.
He looked like walking death.
I went from 170 pounds to 132 pounds. I don't know how I lost that. But it wasn't until Tommy Shaw said to me, I'm afraid I will never see you alive again. That's when the band knew something was terribly wrong.
We didn't know if he was going to live or die.
They finally found a good doctor, and they used aggressive therapy on me.
He wanted to live. He was determined. Came back and stood on that stage with us again. And it was magical. You saw him get better.
I still get chills thinking about it. You know, I think that moment was the moment that he probably decided he could live.
Chuck reacted well to the new treatment and made an emotional return to performing with STYX for one song in Las Vegas. His recovery gave Chuck the strength to finally come out publicly at the annual Human Rights Campaign banquet on July 28, 2001.
My spirit just would flow like this out of my being. And this gigantic burden was erased. Oh, I was myself now.
Coming out is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. I have lived in Chicago my entire life, but speaking to my gay brothers and sisters about coming out means I am finally home. And my greatest hope is one day each and every person can say, I am free and home at last. Thank you.
He's turned a dire situation into an incredibly beautiful story.
Luckily, I survived, and STYX gave me a great platform to speak out against injustice and equal rights for all.
With the tragedy of the Twin Towers, America mourned the victims of 9/11. STYX rallied their friends to hold a benefit for the New York Port Authority and their families.
It was a crushing time, and of course, we feel the effects of it still to this day.
Well, really, it was Tommy's idea, and he just said, we have to do something. We have to take some action.
I called Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon. He said, I'm in. We started calling everybody, and everyone who was available said yes.
From the time that Tommy called me, it was 21 days until we were actually on stage in Atlanta.
Music is connected to the life experiences of so many people, and so for that many people to come together and agree on something is pretty cool.
That was, kind of an honor to be part of.
An amazing amount of money was raised, $500,000. We presented them at Ground Zero a month later, which was an amazing emotional experience for them and for us.
To stand there and give George Lawrence that check that day that's pretty special.
Having released 3 consecutive live albums, STYX returned to the studio for Cyclorama, their first album of new songs since Dennis DeYoung's departure. It was commercially disappointing, but contained some classic STYX songs.
And I can see you standing in the yard, tending the roses.
But all was not rosy in the STYX garden. Reluctant to keep the extensive touring plan in place for 2003, Glenn Burtnick left the band. And with Chuck still too frail to permanently tour, STYX looked for a new bass player. They found Ricky Phillips.
He's one of these guys that I've known for years. Met him when he was in the Babies, and they opened for us in '79.
And he was in Bad English, and he played with David Coverdale and Jimmy Page.
It was a tougher groove, a little heavier bottom, and it helped sit things back a little bit.
I wanted to learn all of Chuck's stuff first, but once I knew what Chuck was doing, I also have to be happy within yourself, and you have to feel like you're giving something.
He's a phenomenal bass player and just a relaxed guy that looks like he belongs in this band.
Celebrating a lifetime of musical influences, STYX released a new album of cover songs entitled The Big Bang Theory. It was their most successful album since 1984, hitting the top 50 on the Billboard chart.
Ultimately, it came down, I think, to songs we felt, hopefully they had played a role in influencing us.
In 2006, manager Charlie Brusco suggested performing with an orchestra of 117 school children. What seemed like a crazy idea became a life-affirming experience for both band and the Cleveland Contemporary Youth Orchestra.
It was such a joy to see them smile.
Working with Lassie Grossman and those kids was an experience I'll never forget.
Imagine a room full of kids already, that energy that they have, then give them a world premiere to play, and it just doubles.
Just a magical night that night.
Tommy Shaw had experienced the lows of addiction, but the new highs of live performance had helped keep Tommy free of alcohol and drugs. And musically, Tommy had an ambition to fulfill. His labor of love was the bluegrass album, The Great Divide.
You know, that people say, what made you write the bluegrass album? The bluegrass album made me do it because it was in me and it wanted to come out.
It's a symphony of recipes and I don't want that music to end.
If Tommy doesn't get a chance to express all those different sides, then I don't think that he will end up being the Tommy Shaw that he is when he's in STYX.
The fans witnessed a very special tour in 2010. STYX performed two of their most enduring albums, Pieces of Eight and The Grand Illusion, from start to finish, as nature intended.
When those records were made, the point of any album was that you listened to it in its entirety. So to vary them in any way, you know, other than the tone of my own voice, that would be sacrilegious to a lot of fans.
It was just sort of a golden era for the creativity of the band.
Those two albums had so many hits on them, and so many important hits that really defined what they've been growing to.
After nearly 40 years as an internationally acclaimed rock band, their appetite for touring is only matched by the fans' hunger for seeing them perform live. And despite some bumps along the way, STYX remain one of the most successful rock bands ever.
There has been a mutual respect for both the body of work that they created before and how they're presenting the body of work to their fans now.
I thank my lucky stars that I was cast in with this lot of great human beings and great musicians.
My most favorite part of this wonderful career that I've been fortunate enough to be successful at is being out in front of the fans on stage.
If you're true to yourself and your music is great, and I think your performance comes from your soul, it really speaks to people, and I think we've captured that.
To quote a song, fooling myself if I don't believe it. I think it could go on for another 10 or 20 years.
And will Tommy ever lay down his guitar?
When they pry it from my cold, clawed hands. Maybe I'll take it with me.